All right. Thanks for coming in, everybody. It is great to be here with my good friend, Sunny Shah. Sunny, give us a little bit of introduction to yourself, and thanks for being here. Tell me about SunnyCreators.
Absolutely. So I started a brand after my namesake because I admire Naval Ravikant and a lot of these people that are kind of personal brand forward people. And I was like, you know what? I have the name Sunny. I might as well use it. And so I started my agency, SunnyCreators, but I'll take a step back and give a little bit of intro to myself for everyone who doesn't know me, because I'm pretty new on the scene. But I'm 28 in Chicago, have been playing between the fields of entrepreneurship and the creator space. I'm both like a social media creator, and then I run a few businesses. I'm, kind of a proud solopreneur, and so working on a few ventures, mainly myself and just like a little bit of help from other people, very much in the discovery part of my life, figuring out what I want to be, what kind of career I want to have. And so that's kind of who I am. I really love community building. I love all things social media marketing, entrepreneurship, leadership, psychology. So happy to chat about anything and everything you're into.
Fantastic. And, Sunny, this is what I thought would be fun about having a conversation with you is that I think we both share this. We have a diversity of interests, and probably makes it hard for us to focus, but also hopefully makes us more interesting people. You've been around entrepreneurs a long time, so I know a little more of your backstory, but what's drawn you? Like, do you remember anything specifically that drew you to entrepreneurship? Like, what got you into wanting to go work for small startups and then, do some of the work you've been doing with entrepreneurs and even now starting your own agency?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was always the culture that drew me to it, because I discovered entrepreneurship in high school, and I just remembered that it felt like the only place where people were just doing things differently. Like, even in the offices, they have cooler furniture. Their events are just like more casual, and people talk about all kinds of different things. And so I immediately sort of felt like, okay, this is the people that I want to be around, seems to be entrepreneurs. And it was this kind of cool mix of people that are very smart, intelligent, ambitious, but at the same time, kind of goofballs, kind of different, very artistic. And so I think the culture is what initially attracted me to it. And then I went to 1871 in Chicago, for those of you here, and that's the big scene for entrepreneurship. And I think just being around that energy, wanting to go to events, I really got into like pitch competitions and just kind of like meeting people. So I honestly got into entrepreneurship because of the culture and the community.
I feel like that's a pretty common and for me, it definitely resonates as far as like reasons to get into this. The fact that you can sit around in a circle of entrepreneurs or join a small entrepreneurial company and everybody there just kind of cares about what they're doing and wants to make it better. That's like it sounds simple, but honestly, like you don't get that at really big companies.
No, it's an infectious energy. Like it really is motivating. So it's just like the people I want to spend time with.
Yeah. So SunnyCreators, social media marketing agency. Give me a little bit more tactically. What does that look like? And obviously you're still in the first year of it, so that's probably shifted a bit. But like generally, what do you offer for clients? What kind of clients are you targeting? That kind of thing.
Totally. So it's very broad. The other reason I named it after myself, SunnyCreators, is because I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into like, okay, this is going to be my offer, this is my agency. I really wanted it to be, okay, this is like my baby, this is something I'm going to grow, and I'm going to sort of figure out what exactly it is. And so right now I keep it very broad as a digital marketing agency. Our main focus is on social media, but we really are open to doing anything in the world of marketing, and it's totally white glove right now. Basically, anytime I build a new relationship, start working with a new client, we'll come up with something totally bespoke for their goals and their strategy. And so it does vary a good bit, but right now I've sort of honed in on two main offers. The first one is Instagram and TikTok short form video for consumer-based startups, mainly like AI or technology-based startups. Basically helping them create daily short form videos that have the chance to go viral on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, and really just focusing on top of funnel brand building for them. And then the second offer that I've been toying with more recently is personal branding for CEOs and entrepreneurs on LinkedIn primarily. And so that's more building up their personal brand, kind of positioning themselves, becoming more of a thought leader, less about going viral, but more about just consistently building up their network and reputation through LinkedIn content. And that's specifically for like CEOs and entrepreneurs that want to be the face of their brand and want to be on video or like talking about their personal life. And so that's very fun because I think personal branding is a very interesting space. Like a lot of agencies, I think, are doing the short form video for Instagram, TikTok. I think it's a little bit more saturated, but I found kind of a unique opportunity. And I think for people listening, there's going to be a lot more demand for this personal branding on LinkedIn and Twitter. So that's kind of been the newer focus.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's, normally I would say starting an agency, you should just pick one single thing to focus on and go deep in it. But I actually kind of like your approach because it sounds like what you've done is you've looked for a couple opportunities and said, all right, I'm going to try each of these opportunities, maybe a couple more that you've, maybe eliminated. And I'm just going to see where this takes me. And then, I'll go narrow down later. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, totally. I come from an entrepreneurship background where it's all about customer discovery and, testing different offers. And so when I started the agency, I was very much like, okay, I'm going to just focus purely on delivering the best results that I can, making great case studies, like building really good stories. And I'm not going to worry so much about focusing on, okay, this is who I like, this is exactly what I offer, this is my niche. Like it has been a very organic kind of discovery process.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, and it's cool to see it in action because I think a lot of times you get the advice like, hey, just pick a niche and that's what you should do, and I do agree with that eventually, but I think there's this phase of discovery that you can't really skip. And some people, maybe they come into their agency already knowing what that niche is because they worked in an industry, they've got some existing customer relationships, but you didn't really come into this like with necessarily a ton of clients ready to come work with you, right? It's kind of built up organically from whatever, right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I have a background in like teaching entrepreneurship. And so I wasn't coming from the agency world. I wasn't really coming from even like corporate world. I was coming from academia. And so it was kind of nice because I got to come in with fresh eyes and do things in my own way, but definitely starting from scratch about a year ago.
Yeah. Let's get into the customer acquisition side of things because, again, you've approached this from like I'm going to find customers who want to pay me to do something first, and then I'll figure out what I can do for them, and then I'll see what works, and I'll kind of narrow down what I'm doing later. How did you get those first few customers, and tell me about maybe a couple of those stories that stand out.
Sure. So I actually didn't even know that I wanted to start an agency originally. My kind of origin story was in October, I moved into Chicago and decided, you know what, I'm going to take the leap into entrepreneurship. I'm not going to like find a new job. I'm just going to start doing stuff that I find interesting and try to start a business. And the original kind of endeavor that I did was a community, basically building up a community of founders and content creators. And I really wanted that to be sort of like my platform from which I can experiment with different ideas and like ideally start a business, and to be almost a networking vehicle. And that ended up being the main lead gen kind of machine for what became the agency. And really it's because I've always loved community and I love hosting dinner parties and just like networking with people. And so I started just connecting with all kinds of people on LinkedIn that I thought were interesting in Chicago's entrepreneurship and startup scene, and literally put them into a Notion database and started just grouping people by like, oh, I think these people would be interested in meeting each other, or these people would have an interesting conversation, and just started hosting these small dinners. And I dubbed it the Chicago Dinner Club. We've hosted like maybe 10 events so far, and it's been a way for me to meet like hundreds of people in Chicago and just get to know them. And I like try my best to do no pitching at these events, like no self-promo, but like really just build genuine relationships. And the people that, I talk to, they care about their businesses, they care about the brands they're building, and so it comes up, and I just try to help them, offer like genuine advice wherever I can. And the majority of my clients have been just like friends that I've made from hosting these dinners and just offering them free advice, and then them being like, hey, why don't you come help us and like take lead on this. So that's been kind of, I'd say, the main way that I find clients. And then the other thing has been like a little bit of inbound social media. Like I try to just like occasionally post on LinkedIn so that I'm staying relatively like in mind for people in my network. And then I find that just by doing that, like once in a while, people will come around to me. And like I had somebody that I'd met 3 years ago because we were both on the Y Combinator co-founder matching platform, and he was looking for a co-founder for the startup that he was starting. I just talked with him. We didn't end up becoming co-founders, but anybody I talk to, I try to just like give them the best advice that I can and help them in their journey for the brief time that I have to meet them. And I guess I left an impression on him because 3 years later, he's been like building his startup successfully, and he hit me up and he's like, hey, I remember our conversation from 3 years ago. Are you still doing digital marketing? Would you be interested in like helping us? And I've kind of seen some of the new stuff you're doing on LinkedIn. So it's been like, I'm very, very big on just like organic, genuine networking and relationship building for early stage entrepreneurs. I think that's like the easiest way to do lead gen.
Yeah, double down on what you just said there, Sunny, which like a couple things that stand out to me. One is, you went about like, hey, I just want to make a place for other people I know in Chicago to make genuine connections, and I want to be genuinely helpful. And you kind of get to put yourself at the center of these connections, which is fantastic. So you're getting to build some trust by doing that. I love that approach. And I think it's a very long view approach. I think a lot of people, when they're starting a business, they're too worried about like, hey, I got to close a deal tomorrow so I have food on the table, instead of worrying about building trust with a small number of people. It's kind of that like 100 true fans model, right? That's really all you need. And I think this is especially true for agencies, because you don't need 10,000 customers as an agency. You really, like, some of the biggest agencies have a few hundred, and even so anyway, there's a ton to learn there from that. It's like, if you can focus on those true connections and being helpful to people, you're going to attract people that just ultimately are like, hey, I need something, and Sunny might be the guy, right? That's the first thing. I applaud you for that and figuring that out, because that's something a lot of people I don't think figure out. And then the second that stands out to me is the staying in touch bit, and finding a way to do that, whether it's through LinkedIn or email or, again, the in-person meetings. I found so many connections that I made 5-10 years ago come back and work with me in some way that I never would have predicted, or I hired them, or they give me a job or make me an intro to a client. Like, it's incredible. And I think that staying in touch piece of networking is so overlooked.
Yeah. And it's so satisfying. Like when, these dots connect and you're like, I can't believe that we did this 3 years ago and now it's led to this. And that is one of my favorite things about business. I could do definitely a better job of keeping up with people. One of my like bucket list items for a long time has been just to have like a personal email, not even newsletter, but just like update email, where it's like once a month to everybody in my network who just like cares about me. Here's an email, just like what I'm up to for the last month. I kind of use LinkedIn for that a little bit, but I think like, yeah, just nurturing your larger network and keeping in touch with people is so powerful, especially for entrepreneurs.
There's a tool, I'll throw this one, you can try it out if you want. A friend of mine turned me onto it called Dex. I think it's getdex.com maybe. And it's like a personal CRM. So it, plugs into your LinkedIn and your phone book and whatever, and you can kind of choose for every connection, like, how often do I want to keep up with them? And it's very lightweight, unlike a lot of CRMs, which are, kind of force you to do a lot of work. This is like just a reminder to keep in touch with certain people. And so I do that for, I've got 100 or so people I'm trying to keep in touch with at least annually. And
that's cool.
It's helpful for me. I think whatever system you come up with works, right? And LinkedIn is fine as long as you're staying in the algorithm, but it's kind of annoying that
LinkedIn,
they have
you don't
control.
have real control.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So you should have something where it's in your own control. I have my own Notion database with like everybody that I keep in touch with. But I'll check out Dex. That sounds really useful.
Another approach. All right. So personal connections is working to get customers. We were just talking, briefly mentioned before the show, like, there's other things you're looking to try. Why even try other things though, Sunny? Like, maybe this is a dumb question, but I like to ask what seems obvious. Like, why not just continue and double down on the dinner clubs?
That's totally like a fair approach. For me, I just like to always be trying different things. And I find that, the dinner club is a little bit slow to build, right? I think anytime you're building a community, it's not like, oh, I can just like cold email out like automated invites. Like, you're not going to build something real. It's very much like I'm manually connecting with all these people on LinkedIn. I'm manually messaging them one by one. And, it's not all templates. Like, I'm trying to have genuine conversations. And so, I think it's just like not super scalable. I am starting like just now to scale it by actually bringing in other people that want to be like network leaders and want to kind of have this authority and be like, hey, do you want to come in and be like one of the organizers with me on the dinner club? And then they can start bringing in people. So I'm experimenting now with like, okay, can I actually scale up this dinner club faster? But I'm also always interested in just trying other forms of lead gen for the learning of it, more than anything. Like one client I'd gotten because someone invited me to come and give a workshop on personal branding, because I have like a public speaking business. And so I do some like workshops for corporate, clients. And I'd never done a personal branding workshop, but I did it mainly off the cuff. And that led to like a pretty good client for me. And so I started thinking, okay, this worked. Like I learned something. It was totally organic and natural, but can I try to take this and then, turn it into a system for me? And so now I'm exploring, can I productize or like, in a freemium kind of way, offer this personal branding workshop and then use that as lead gen? And who knows, maybe it'll work out. Then it's just another mechanism. I'm kind of also experimenting with like a more standard cold email automated campaign, just because I like to learn about it and try it. And I feel like it only takes so much effort to do something like 10% of the way. And doing that 10% will give you a much better idea of if you should actually try something than when you're sitting at 0%. And so my big thing is like capture a little bit of information and then decide whether or not you want to try something.
Yeah. I think you bring up an interesting point around even scaling the dinner club. Like as you do it and you bring in other people to lead dinners, you start to lose the personal connection and trust, and it becomes more trust in the organization, right? So now, if I come to one of your dinners and someone else is leading, I don't necessarily meet Sunny, and maybe you do go to all of them for a while, but at some point you get big enough that you can't just be at every single one, right? So you're starting to like, the lead gen that was like, oh, I trust Sunny, and so I'm going to work with his agency.
You dilute it.
Yeah, you started to dilute it, ironically, by trying to scale it. I think that is one of the important things. This kind of like to the broader point, and I thought about this very intentionally when I started draft.dev. Like early days, it was my personal brand, 100%. It was linked to my personal connections, but I knew I didn't want it to be stuck there forever, because in 2 years, I might want to be working on something else, or I might want to be less active. I might want to take a month off, like whatever it is. And so, building up channels that don't require you as a founder is extremely helpful for keeping the business like healthy in the long term, but also like maybe selling it someday or having, the ability to take time off, which we all want at some point. So I think you're right to explore, but yeah, it's hard to know, because a lot of these you're going to waste effort on, right?
Yeah. And, entrepreneurship's like a board game, right? And I was just playing this board game Coup the other day, and it's like every turn you get to make one decision. Like, do you want to collect resources? Do you want to attack somebody? And entrepreneurship, I kind of feel that way when I wake up in the morning. I'm like, reasonably speaking, I have all these things I want to do. I'm only going to do one of them, probably. And so it's hard to choose, like, okay, this day, like in my good hours, what is the one thing that I want to like move the needle on? And so that's very tough. I'm very intuitive about choosing it, mainly based off like what seems fun and interesting to me right now. Do I feel like working on the dinner club? Do I feel like working on the website? Do I feel like, going and meeting somebody for coffee? And I just like try to do what feels fun.
No, that's a really good point. And I think this only gets harder the bigger and more complex the company gets, because you've got, at some point you may get it to where you don't have to do anything in the business. So then what do you want to do? Like, it's up to you. You can go decide to pursue acquisitions. You can go decide to do completely new business. You can go decide to hire and develop your leadership team to another level. You can go do new business development. Like, and every day you're kind of making this decision, or hopefully working against maybe some longer term goals and some stuff like that. But it's okay in the beginning, I think, to keep it a little bit fluid and like, pursuing what you want.
And it's really hard to say. Like, a lot of times people think like, okay, you should try to be focusing your time on the most high leverage activities you can do. Because if it is like a game, okay, how are you going to win the most? It's by creating the most possible leverage. And so you should be building out a team and doing things like, raising capital. But at the same time, some of the best decisions I've made have been the total opposite of that, where it's like, okay, I'm going to just grind for hours messaging people on LinkedIn, like no leverage, total grunt work, like anybody could do it. But that's been, some of the most high ROI stuff. I learned the most from that. And it's like, okay, it doesn't make sense on paper necessarily. And so a lot of the times I just feel like you have to trust your gut and then, see what happens.
I think there's something to be said for optimizing for learning there for sure. Because if you've never done any amount of a job, let's say sales is an obvious one. I hear this from a lot of like, because my background being engineering, a lot of my friends who are engineers want to start a SaaS someday, right? And often they think I'll just build the product and I'll hire someone to do sales. Well, in theory, this is a high leverage decision because their skill is product and engineering. So they shouldn't be doing a low leverage task like making sales calls and sending cold emails and grinding away, right? But in practice, you should know how to do something to a very basic level so that you can hire someone better to do it, or so that you can learn how customers think about your product and the way you talk about it. Like there's so much learning that happens in just doing that grunt work a little bit, especially early on, that I think you're right. Like it's okay to not be 100% like, or to maybe you have to shift your thinking about what is high leverage at this point. Again, learning might be higher leverage than raising money if you don't have the knowledge that you need to actually go do it well.
Absolutely. And, you've got to be okay with wasting time, I think. Like, there's days where I'll spend like the whole day on a video, like making one video, and it'll get, 400 views. And on paper, it's like, okay, that was kind of a waste of a day. But it's like, okay, no, you have to keep in mind, you are always sharpening your skill set. And like in making that video, if your focus is on like, okay, I'm not just trying to get this done, but I'm trying to learn, one new editing technique, or I'm trying to practice my writing, make it a little bit better. And then I think you get to the feeling of, okay, maybe some days feel like, oh, I didn't really achieve what I wanted, but as long as every day you're sharpening your skill set, I think that's very underrated. And another good reason to like try a little bit of all the different domains. And, even if your co-founder's way better than you on, operations, try to help out a little bit and see what you can contribute. That way you can learn that side of the business a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're right on there. Just got to like find that balance. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of getting into the work you do for clients, but like let's talk about you posted on LinkedIn about a month ago, kind of an example of a video that you did for a client that got, I think, 8 million views from a single video. So super cool. I mean, first of all, I've never had anything I've been on or been part of with 8 million views. So kudos. And
thank you.
I don't even know if we produce lots of podcasts, but none of them, individual episodes get 8 million views. So I think that's
that video
cool.
is at 30 million now.
30 million. Okay. So you got to go update that post. Yeah, that's crazy.
I knew.
So,
I got to update it. It was bonkers. Like, and I've won money at the casino. That has been like an amazing feeling. And it does not compare to getting 30 million views. Like the red notifications is crazy.
Right. So give me a little bit of background there. What were you guys working on? How did this come about? And then what did you learn and take away? And what's the, what do we take away from that?
Absolutely. So I'd started with this client actually just a few months ago, and they're an AI consumer software startup. And I have a very I'm very kind of like customized boutique for like each client I have, but I definitely have some like principles and frameworks for the different platforms. And one thing that I really believe in, if anybody's like a social media creator or, has a social media agency, I found that one of the best places to start is literally just mimicking what's already working. And it sounds like a very simple and maybe trite idea, but I think it's very hard to put into practice because it can feel a little bit like cheating. But these like social media platforms, especially TikTok and Instagram, they're designed to be collaborative, where you're remixing ideas, you're kind of like being part of the larger conversation. And so what I like to do anytime I'm starting with a new client is identify 5 to 10 successful creators in that niche and just keep keeping track of their viral videos and what are they making that's really resonating. And eventually I found a video that I really liked, kind of the style of it. It was like a skit-based video, and so it felt very organic. Like it felt like something like a high schooler would make with their friend, and doesn't feel like corporate marketing. And it was relevant to kind of the product that I had to advertise. And so I took that skit and I did what I call like the 90-10 rule, which is keep 90% of that video the same. Like I didn't really change the hook. I didn't really change like the main principle or like the emotion that got people into it. But I changed 10% of it, which was mainly featuring our product. And then I think just like adding in my own energy and like my style of like comedy and speaking. And so 2 little variables I injected of my own, but I kept what worked working. And so that video naturally did okay. Not as good as the original viral video, but it got maybe 5,000, 10,000 views, which is out of like the 300 view jail that a lot of people start in on like TikTok and Instagram. And so I was like, okay, this kind of worked. Let me just remix this video and keep tweaking it and see how much better I can get it. And so I changed the hook a little bit and it got a little bit more views. I changed, the angle of the video, kind of like the way that the camera person was walking up. I keep making these tweaks, and occasionally the video would pop up a little bit better, and one would get 50,000 views, one would get 100,000 views. And I literally kept making different forms of this very similar skit video, but tweaking certain variables. And fundamentally, it was about answering job interview questions. And so in every video, I try to have a different job interview question be kind of the crux of it. And it really was like a grind of finding out, reading the comments, seeing oh, in this one, they thought it was really funny that I was wearing a buttoned-up T-shirt but shorts because I was in a Zoom interview. And they were like, oh, I was doing that in the pandemic. And I'm like, okay, if that's interesting to people, then I'll always be wearing shorts in the video. And then I noticed, okay, I put this golden statue of a snake on my table. And a lot of people in the comments are like, what is that snake? Is that a real snake? And so then in all my videos, I have this snake. And so I kept kind of just improving this video until it started to 1 out of 7 times hit 1 million views, and then that one got 25 million views.
Wow. So you're basically recreating the same video, with just slight tweaks over and over, trying to learn every single time. That's incredible. I did not realize that was a strategy that would work.
Yeah, and it's because a lot of times on Instagram and TikTok, you have brands that are every video is different because everybody's seeing every video. And so you can't really inundate people with the same thing. But oftentimes on TikTok and Instagram, they'll figure out that, okay, this is the kind of account that needs to be mainly new people seeing the video every time. And so we definitely are getting followers and people that watch consistently, but for the majority of these videos, the majority of people watching them are discovering us for the first time. And it seems strange because millions of people are watching these videos, but it's literally millions of people that are discovering us for the very first time. And so it feels for me, it was hard for a while to be, satisfied creatively making the same kind of video every day. I'm like, oh, this is not creatively fulfilling at all. But at the end of the day, my job isn't to be an artist. My job is to create results for my client. And they're getting new website clicks, they're getting new audience. And the algorithms, they liked it because the video was entertaining people, and they just figured out okay, this is the kind of page where I need to just be recommending this video to different people more often rather than the existing followers.
Yeah. Did you have any pushback from the client saying is this really is this worth continuing to create the same video and over and over and over, Sunny? It's what is this?
There's all kinds of clients I love. I love the ones that are artists and they're this is the brand we want to create. This kind of founder is extremely data driven. And he showed me his dashboard and he's like, this is our competitor. They get this many hundreds of thousands of page clicks a month, and your job is to get us that many page clicks a month. And we don't care how you do it, but we have a feeling that it's going to require millions of views. And I remember the first time I put in our Slack group, woo, we got a viral video, 50,000 views. And he was like, great, we need millions and millions more. And so I was like, okay, I understand this guy's MO. And so awesome. I'm just going to focus on that and make it happen.
There's a lot of lessons to be taken away from this. Even though there's down the tactical level, I didn't realize you could kind of just keep tweaking and reposting the same video, but that's a really cool idea, and I'm going to steal that from you. But I also think that at a higher level, you've touched on something I mention a lot to entrepreneurs. So Tony Robbins introduced me to this idea called modeling, which is basically, if you're wanting to start a business, do some big ambitious thing, go find 5 to 10 people who have done what you want to do, or roughly what you want to do, and see what their path was. Learn everything you can about what they went through to get there. Now, obviously no two paths are alike, right? But there's going to be some commonalities, some common traits that tend to pop up over and over and over again. And so that's your guiding light. That's how you decide how you go do that really big thing you want to do. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's a fantastic way to take the pressure off, because it can feel like we're in this extremely open-ended environment where you can do anything, which is technically, kind of true when you're starting. But there's a million templates for us to follow. And if you have a person you want to be like someday, go learn about what they did and how they got there and what their steps were. And that gives you I'm literally following that kind of guidepost to my next thing too. I think it sounds simple, but it really does. It legitimately works, because none of this stuff is impossible that we're doing. It's just hard.
Absolutely. And I'm a big believer in kind of that apprentice model. There was like a funny story where somebody emailed Warren Buffett and they were like, "Hey, Warren, I would love to work for you. I really just want to learn from you. And literally, you don't even have to pay me. I'll work for $1 a year and I don't even mind." And Warren Buffett emailed him back and he's like, $1 a year is way too expensive for, the value that I'd be giving you, allowing you to work for me for free. And my opinion is Warren is 100% right, but there's a sweet spot you can find where you don't need to be working under Warren Buffett because you're light years away from him, but there's probably somebody that's 5 years ahead of you, and they probably would be willing to, have you work for them for free or at a very affordable rate. And that's actually the person that you can learn the most from, because they're going to tell you everything you need just to achieve in 5 years what they've got. And so I think my very first social media client actually was an entrepreneur named Mert, who I literally was like, "You're where I want to be in 10 years. Can I work for you for free?" And I was doing social media marketing for him. He's a very nice guy. And so he's like, I will pay you. I won't take it for free. But it basically was a mentor relationship in exchange. And that's how I really started the whole thing. Even I think a year ago, I reached out to you and I was like, "Hey, you're doing stuff I want to do. Can I work for you in some capacity?" And, here we are now.
Here we are. Yeah. No, it's totally true, Sunny. I love that approach. And I think I've done that directly and indirectly in the past. It's absolutely helpful. Now my sort of mentors, 5-10 years ahead of me are a little more indirect, where I'm not working for them. But I certainly have a group that I stay in touch with because I want to be where they're at in a few years. And I think that's a great thing to do at all levels. How do you feel like this whole thing is going to scale? So and what I mean is the amount of work you put into getting a viral hit there was pretty significant. And I don't know how many hours it was, but it took a level of tenacity and grit that I would guess 90% of employees don't have, right? And so I think early on you have to do this yourself. There's no substitute. That's great. Is it going to scale? Do you think it's going to scale? How are you going to do that? I'm just curious if you have thoughts on that yet, or if that's something you're going to cross that bridge when you come to it.
For me, I think the Instagram and TikTok kind of will help you go viral. I don't really see that scaling as my main thing, just because there isn't really a differentiator for me. If I have 4 clients, I'm not going to be able to get all of them millions of views. A lot of it is, you kind of have to get lucky as part of it.
Yeah, just luck. Right. You can't.
It's just luck.
Substitute it. Yeah.
And sometimes I have clients where I feel like I'm trying, very similarly for them, and the results just aren't there. And so that's why I've been more recently more interested in the personal branding on LinkedIn side of things. I feel like it's much more scalable just because everyone I've worked with has been happy with the results. Because if you're an entrepreneur or, doing something relatively interesting, you probably have interesting stories to tell on LinkedIn. And it's not a very competitive platform because they're newer into the content game. A lot of people, a lot of professionals, they're older. They're not as used to posting and sharing their thoughts in a way that people want to consume on social media. And so there's a lot more opportunity to just be successful there. And so if I had to guess, I'm still in the exploratory phase, and obviously I had a very successful case study. And so I want to take advantage of that and see, how I can use that to grow that offer. But I think the better place where I have a chance to build something at scale is through creating this network of people building their personal brands on LinkedIn for a couple reasons. 3 reasons. One, it's consistently successful. Like if you follow the playbook, if you do what you need to do, like there's so much ROI in the terms of, I've had clients that find employees through their content, they find investors through their content, obviously they find customers, they find partners. Like there's a huge amount of opportunity on LinkedIn as opposed to just trying to get customers on Instagram. And so you're more likely to be satisfied. Two, there's a network effect, right? I try to always encourage my clients on LinkedIn to get to know each other and cross-promote each other's stuff, comment on each other, give each other advice. And I especially want to build up a concentrated group of business people and entrepreneurs in Chicago who are building their brand on LinkedIn so they can even meet in person, create content together, and create almost this like mafia of business leaders in Chicago that are all using this superpower of creating LinkedIn content. And I truly believe it is like a superpower. And I think once enough people are using it and other people kind of see like, oh, this is working really well for them. It's another like nice thing about the nature of LinkedIn is like my entire market is connected with the rest of my market. And so I have a feeling that if I'm able to do a good job there, and people are having good success stories, there might be like a just word of mouth kind of organic mechanism there that continues to like grow and scale that community of leaders building their personal brand. And then the last piece of it is I think it's something that I'm uniquely suited for because personal branding, I think, comes down to psychology. And I like studied psychology. I've always loved this. And it's a lot about like helping people realize who is it that you want to be, like really in a deep way, thinking about like, your personal brand is your reputation. Like it is how people know you. It's the mark that you want to leave, the impact you want to have. And so for a lot of people, the work that they do on personal branding is like deeply meaningful and important to them. And through creating content, like it's itching a scratch for them that like their work does not itch anywhere else. I really believe that it's like an artistic channel for business people. And I feel like through the way that I have conversations with people and helping them frame the entire endeavor in that kind of way as like a creative pursuit, I think is a unique and like rewarding experience. And so I'm hoping that I kind of have a unique opportunity to scale that offer just since I think it's a perspective that a lot of people in my position don't necessarily have.
Yeah, I would 100% agree that if I'm in your shoes starting a social media agency, the real long-term money is in the personal branding and the high ROI, low numbers kind of posts. So for example, I totally agree with what you're saying there. I post on LinkedIn almost every day, right? And I don't need millions of people viewing those posts or commenting. I need like hundreds and maybe low thousands on the occasional hits, right? And honestly, that alone still brings me a ton of value. So I just had a client this morning on a call reference like, oh, I love your LinkedIn post. That's really great. And it's like to get that extra touch point with a client who's paying me thousands of dollars a year I can't tell you how valuable that is. That means they remember I'm here. They're going to keep coming back to me. They have a good positive association with me. They tell their friends about me. I mean, that's worth many tens of thousands of dollars off of, just keeping this thing going, right? And that's one single client. So I think it's so easy to like to just like know there's ROI there. And again, it just takes a matter of like keeping that pipeline going. I don't have to have viral hits. I don't have to have millions of viewers. I don't even know if millions of viewers on my content would make a real difference in the business, given the type of business it is, So, but again, an agency that can keep that up is very valuable. I would think, versus again, like if I have to keep hitting viral hits, like you're right, you're going to knock it out of the park with a few clients, and then a lot of them, they're going to be like, well, you never really got one for us, and how do you scale that?
Yeah. And I like often think about this idea that like, what's the best way to like be very good at selling something is to truly deeply believe that it is going to help the other person, because you cannot help but sell the things that you like deeply believe in. Like if you love this, like, if you love Orange Theory, you're going to like tell all your friends to do it, even if they're like, shut up, bro, I don't want to go to Orange Theory. And so I think when you're starting a business, you've got to get to that point where what you're selling, you like just so truly deeply believe in it that you're like, I feel bad not convincing people to drink the Kool-Aid because I really know it works. And when it comes to posting on social media, it's a lot harder for me to be like, okay, you should definitely be posting on TikTok and Instagram every day, because it is expensive. It's not something that they can just very easily and cheaply do. And it's not that guaranteed. Like it might not be the best use of their time. But I have almost never met an entrepreneur where I'm not trying to convince them, start posting on LinkedIn once a week, because I've just seen it so many times. I just know so deeply it is worth it to post once a week on LinkedIn. It's like, and the way that I do it with them, it's not that time intensive, it's not that cost intensive. And so I just like deeply believe that it's worthwhile.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree. Let's get into, in the last little section here, I want to talk about the feelings of entrepreneurship. So one of the things that, for anybody who's relatively new to this, I think it can be a big shock moving from employee to entrepreneur. And for some people, the shift is more gradual. There's a lot of people who start as freelancers and then slowly kind of build up an agency. There's other people who jump straight in with both feet. How did that feel for you? I mean, what you kind of said, you drew a line in the sand, said in October, I'm going to be self-employed. How was that? And how did that feel? Good, bad, exciting, scary, all of that?
To me, this is a very important question, because it's a question everybody needs to think about, is how are you going to get into the game? And for a lot of people, and what I tried to do was the 5 to 9 thing, where it's like, okay, you've got your 9 to 5, and then from 5 to 9, you work on building something else. And I think that's a great approach for a lot of people, but it just did not work for me. The way that my brain is wired, I knew that I could not just maintain a regular 9 to 5 job, because I like doing so many different things all the time. My brain goes in so many different places. And so I just, it wasn't the, environment for me. But at the same time, I'm somebody that can really sit in my comfort zone. And it's not something I'm proud of, but I'm like, okay, if things are going well and work is good and my friends and my family are good and life is good, I'm just cruising. And so I realized that I'm going to need to have some risk. I need to have some skin in the game in order for me to really work hard. And so eventually, I went from job to job to job after college, no more than 2 years at one place, just because, I can't stay put that long. And after I think my fourth job, or my third job, I'd finally reached a financial safety bank that I'd had set out in my head since I graduated. And I was like, okay, once I have this much, I'll feel confident going out on a limb and trying my own thing. And so I finally hit that number and was like, okay, I'm going to take the leap and forget the 5 to 9 thing and just give myself 1 year. And so I signed a new apartment lease. I went there for a year and I was like, I'm not going to take a new job. I'm just going to do things that I really enjoy doing and have fun, and view this as my MBA for 1 year. And it's okay, I'm never going to go to business school, but I'm going to learn more than I would in business school just through working on fun projects. And I have my tuition money saved up that even if I don't make $1, even if I'm totally unsuccessful, I'll feel okay, that was my investment in myself. Now I'll go back to working. And I literally moved, and then a week later, you wake up, all of your friends are going to their jobs, social media is quiet, and you're sitting there in your apartment, and you're like, what do I do now? And I open my computer, my calendar's a blank white canvas, and I just started thinking about what now my life is starting. This is my whole, I went through school, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I went through college, I kept working jobs while trying to work on projects and gain my skills and make money. And I was like, okay, eventually I'm gonna be at the starting line. And October, I'm like, okay, this is it. And the feeling was totally different than anything I'd had in my whole life, where I'm like, all right, I imagine it's similar to an athlete the first time they get into a league, where it's now this is my chance to prove myself. There was a lot of that, a lot of I'm competitive, I've never been successful and I'm being loud about it, I'm posting about it. People know that I'm trying to do this. And so I want to be successful at it. So there was a bit of that. And then there was a lot of romantic energy around I'm 28, I feel like Newton did his best work when he was 28, Einstein did his best work. Before the world kind of gets to you and you become like really part of the machine, I feel like you look at things very differently. And I remembered even when I was 17, I saw things that adults didn't see. And like I was right about a lot of things that adults weren't right about. And I'm like, I probably have the same kind of unique perspective and insights at 28. And so I'm going to try and be audacious and build the thing that I really see, like create my vision, and try to like make something that I'm proud of. And so that's why I started doing the dinner club, because to me, like that was part of my vision. Like the best parts of my life are when I'm bringing people together and having these amazing conversations and building relationships. And so I didn't know what the money path forward would be, but I'm like, okay, the impact that I want to leave is like building community and being a leader for the people that I care about. And so let me start doing that and just have like my few principles around doing good value, like trying to bring value as much as you can wherever possible, being a scientist and experimenter, and like going back to first principles and just doing things you love. And so keeping like these few simple principles and just trying to like work hard, have fun, and like do my best this year. And it's been like one of the best years of my life. And so anybody that wants to take that leap and that jump and you're a little bit afraid, like it is extremely scary. And I was like, every day I would like go to sleep a little bit anxious because what happens if I can't make it work? But overall, it's been very worth it.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. And something that really resonates that you said, and this is something I tell entrepreneurs a lot too. I was the first employee at basically 3 startups. I was like in the first 5 employees before starting out on my own. And that's a great way to get exposed to entrepreneurship, but it's not truly entrepreneurship. I had a paycheck. I was a W-2, like it was a very different, I did not have my life savings on the line or anything. And I was comfortable too. I probably wouldn't have gotten out and started my own thing if I hadn't kind of been pushed from the nest. And it was a little bit similar. I didn't have like this line in the sand, but the startup I worked for started to fall apart. They cut me down to half time, and it's like, okay, I got to start planning the next move, And so half time, it's like, it's a nice little buffer zone where I'm like, all right, well, maybe I can get self-employed for the other half and make up for it. And it worked out, long story short, it took off and like, I got a real business out of it. But if I hadn't been initially pushed from the nest and kind of had this line in the sand, it's like, all right, you're kind of done here. I don't know that I would have, because it was easy. And I think that's something that, again, I'm probably like you in that if I have a 9 to 5 to fall back on, it's too easy to make excuses to not go work on that entrepreneurial thing at night or on the weekend, because like it's hard, man. Like honestly, and I've got a family, I've got friends, I've got like hobbies. I think there's a certain degree of, if you can get yourself financially to a point where you can just put a line in the sand and say, I'm going to work on my own project for 6 months, a year, or whatever. Like it's way bigger of a forcing function than anything else.
Yeah. And I really like the idea of part-time, like freelancing or consulting. I think freelancing to me is like entrepreneurship light, because you sort of are, for the first time, like accountable to your results. Like, when you work a job, you're sort of like, okay, you have to please your manager and you have to like not ruffle too many feathers. When you're a freelancer or a consultant, you have to like earn your paycheck and you have to be delivering results and you have to be doing kind of the marketing and like finding new clients and stuff. But at the same time, there is a little bit more security. It's a little bit more familiar. And so I think it's an interesting bridge. And in some ways, I kind of did a similar thing with like social media freelancing, bridging into like full-on entrepreneurship. And so I think that's another kind of good pathway that people can take.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're still, on that borderline of freelancing / agency. Because, you think of a true agency maybe is always hiring stuff out, whereas a freelancer is always doing all the work yourself. And you're kind of like, you're right in that hybrid spot, which is typical.
Yeah. I've got this weird thing where I'm like, I'm a solopreneur. Like most of my businesses, like I view them as like one-person businesses, but I have a key teammate for every business. And so somebody that's incentivized in some way. Sometimes I'm paying them, sometimes it's something else, but it's someone that I can be accountable to so that they're motivating me, a thought partner. So for the community, the dinner, the agency, the public speaking business, this podcast I'm starting, I always need a teammate in some capacity. I think that's really important.
Yeah. 2 last quick questions for you, Sunny. What's a book you've read in the last couple of years that's really made a big impact on you?
Navalmanak. I was on a plane, I think back from India, like 8-hour plane, and I had two books downloaded on my phone. One was Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. The other was Naval Manak, which is basically a collection, like not written by Naval Ravikant, but somebody else like wrote a book from all the different content that he's produced. And my friend Jack Butcher, he did the illustrations for it. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me read this. And it was amazing. It was split up into like health, wealth, and wisdom as like three big topics, a ton of like interesting philosophy, really like thinking about from an entrepreneurial perspective, like what's a meaningful life, like what's really worthwhile. Naval is a great thinker, and so that was one of the best books I've read, and yeah, it's perfect for a plane.
Yeah, that's great. And then last question, if we check back with you in a year, Sunny, what do you hope to have accomplished, or where do you hope the business is? What's your dream for a year from now?
Honestly, I don't really have any set goals. Like I always wanted to make 100K a year, and I always viewed that if I'm making enough to sustain myself, then I'm winning. And so I definitely want to grow, and I want to be like, oh yeah, the business has doubled in the last year. But honestly, if it hasn't grown at all, that's perfectly fine. I think what the measurement that I like to like have for myself is what percentage of my day am I really enjoying? And right now, it's like half and half. I'd say half of it I really love, half of it's kind of a grind. It's stuff that I'm paying my dues now so that I can reap the benefits later. And so I hope that like as time goes on, I just keep putting myself in a position where, you know, maybe next time we talk, 75% of my job I'll really love, and 25%, you know, will still be working for the future. I would say if there's one thing that I want to push myself to do and to like manifest for when we meet again is to really build out my team. And I think like the most important thing to me in the next 10 years of my entrepreneurship journey is team formation, because I want to play this game for decades. And the dinner club, the agency, like these are just my starter businesses. This is just me cutting my teeth and getting to know people. And I think like the most valuable and important thing that I want to get out of the next year, the next 5 years is like meeting other people around my age who are like trying to at similar stages to me and like putting together a really amazing team that can go on and like build something incredible.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great goal. So Sunny, where can people find out about you, read more about you, follow up with you? How do you like people to contact you, et cetera?
Yeah, best is LinkedIn, just Sunny Shah on LinkedIn. Next best is Instagram at Sunny Shah Flow on Instagram. And the website is SunnyCreators.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Sunny. This was great to catch up and get it on recording. And we'll definitely talk before a year, but maybe our next recording will be a year out. We'll have some big updates from you.
I love it. I love the longitudinal research. I think it's going to be super interesting. Excited for the podcast, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Sunny.
All right.
Thank you for watching this episode of Retain Trust. If you like this one, give it a thumbs up and subscribe on YouTube. It takes 2 seconds and it helps others find out about the show. And if you have questions or suggestions for a future episode, leave a comment. See you next time.